Hey there, we are talking about 6-4 day 2 notes. So we are graphing logarithmic equations. What I want to start with is going back through and talking about how we graph exponential functions and then relate it to logarithmic functions. And that is simply because they are inverse functions. So when we graph this, the first thing that we did is we took out any of the shifts. So I have this, and with that, we did the numbers -1. I'm sorry, I'm using either my mouse or my cursor. None of them are really great. So we are putting -1, 0, and 1 because that gives us that nice turn in our exponential function. So when I take -1 and put it in there, I get 1/3 here, and 2 times 1/3 gives me 2/3. Anything to the 0 power, so 3 to the 0 power is 1 times 2 is 2. And finally, I have 3 to the first, which is 3 times 2 is 6. So again, we're multiplying by 3 every time. Next thing that we are doing is we are adding on any shifts that we have. And our shift here is a k value, and k, we add 1, or whatever the k is, to your y value. So again, x values didn't change because I didn't have an h value. If I had an h value, it would have been up here with the exponent, and we would have added whatever that h value was here, but we don't have one. So the k value is 1. So with all of these, I am just adding 1 in there, and I then am going to graph this. So at -1, I'm at 1 2/3. At 0, I'm at 3. And at 1, I'm at 9. And then sketch your graph. Oops, sorry. Sketch your graph in here. How did I know that this was going to be not way down at the bottom? Well, because exponential functions have asymptotes, and our asymptote is wherever the k value is. That was not a very straight line, but there it is. And so now I know my asymptote is at y equals 1. So what we're doing with that is we have a logarithmic function. Now, you dealt with logarithmic functions yesterday. We are looking at this again. We're going to graph this. This is the general logarithmic function. So these are the steps that I like to do, and it's very similar to what we do with exponential. So that's why I graphed one of those first. So write an equation without your translations, so no a, h, or k. Then rewrite the logarithm into exponential form. So it'll look kind of weird. You'll have 3 to the y equals x, or something to the y equals x. It'll seem kind of backwards. When you make a table of values, you will put in your y values and you will find your x values, so which is opposite of what we always have been doing. And then once we're done with that, then we're going to use our a, h, and k and translate just like we did with the exponential. So again, here is the stuff. If you want to write it down, pause the video. I am going to move on. So first one is here. So what we want to do first is rewrite this in exponential form. So this is going to be basis 3. This is just a y value equals x. So once we have that, then we want to put in values for y to find x. I am using those same values I had before. So -1, 0, and 1. I'm putting -1 in here, so my x would be 1/3. When I put 0 in, I get 1, and when I put 1 in, I get 3. So at 1/3, I'm at -1. At 1, I'm at 0, and at 3, I'm at 1. So it looks like this, which is a little different than what we had done before. Just so you know, we now have, oh, that's supposed to be a straight line. I'm so sorry about that. So this is our new asymptote. It is a vertical line now, and it's always going to be wherever your h value is. We didn't have an h value, so this stays at x equals 0. Okay, so your vertical asymptote is now going to shift left and right depending on your h value. Okay, so we have this guy. We're going to do a couple things. First thing, I am going to rewrite it in exponential form. Oops, that was supposed to be 1/4 to the y equals x. So once we have that, we are going to fill in -1, 0, and 1 for y. When I put -1 in here, I get 4. I put 0 in, I get 1. And when I put 1 in, I get 1/4. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, -1. I have 1, 0, and I have 1/4, 1. So this guy looks like this. Wish this was easier to write with. I could use a stylus right now. And then because h didn't change, your vertical asymptote is here at x equals 0. So now we are doing something that has, there's your a value, this is your k value. I don't have an h value. So to be very clear, an h value, if you have one, will be in parentheses with your x. As I go back, this one does not have parentheses. So this is going to be your k value. So rewrite it without translations. This is going to be y equals log base 6 of x. Then write it in exponential form. So I have 6 to the y equals x. And with that, of course, I'm putting the values of -1, 0, and 1 in there. And finding your values. So I got 1, 6, I got 1, and I got 6. Then I am looking at your a value and your k value. So I don't have an h value. H is your x values are not going to change. So the only thing that's going to change is your y values or your f of x. So we are multiplying each of the values by a first and then subtracting 1. So 1/6 times 1/3 gives me 1/18 minus 1 gives me -17/18. This is kind of icky. You can use a fraction or a decimal in your calculator if you want. 1 times 1/3 minus 1. So 1 times 1/3 gives me 1/3 minus 1 is -2/3. 6 times 1/3 is 2 minus 1 is 1. So when I graph this, I have 1/6 and close to 1. And then I have 1 and 2/3, and then 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. So it kind of goes, I didn't do such a great job of this, but it kind of goes like this. Again, it'll go straight down. If you graph it in your graphing calculator, it will actually stop like right here, and you need to redraw it. It's just that it gets closer to that vertical asymptote. So make sure that you do that. So I'm not going to do this one, but if you want to try it on your own. Again, you are going to rewrite it without your translations, then write it in exponential form. So it should be 1/3 to the y equals x. So then you're going to go through and make your table of values, and then you're going to multiply all of your f of x values by 4, and you're going to subtract 2 from your x values. Then plot your new one. This again, because you have an h of -2, your new asymptote will be shifted over to x equals -2. It'll be shifted over here, and you'll see it when you do that graph. So, and we're not going to do this one. You guys are just plug it in and find the value. But this is graphing logarithmic equations in a nutshell. We are going to go through it again on Monday.